are you, Dr. Amy?
Yes, very good. Thanks for being here.
No problem.
Okay, so Jennifer, I wanted to have you on as a guest because you have a really interesting but inspiring story. So I want to share that. So why don't you just introduce yourself and take us back to the beginning and kind of start at the very beginning.
Sure. So I am a wife, a mom, a special ed teacher, a super healthy person, exercised, I have not eaten meat in 34 years. I gave up dairy 10 years ago. So, super healthy in that aspect. And I had no health issues. I had no signs anything was going on. I was definitely tired, but being a teacher during the 2 years of the pandemic, everyone was exhausted. And then we ended up finding a lump. So was to go in to see the gynecologist. I ended up getting COVID. So then that got pushed back for weeks. They wouldn't see me until I was over COVID. So went for that. They sent me for the mammo ultrasound and told me I needed the biopsy, and went through the biopsy. And then February 2nd of 2022, I was diagnosed stage 4 metastatic breast cancer.
Wow. How did you find the lump?
Actually, it was my husband.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it like came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It was, it was just there. It wasn't there weeks prior. It was just it. HER2 positive metastatic breast cancer is highly aggressive. And my oncologist thinks that it just, like, once it started, it just took off.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you were diagnosed stage 4, what were kind of the points that put you over into that stage 4 diagnosis?
I guess it would be the amount that the cancer had spread to already. So when I was diagnosed, they found 4 tumors in the left breast. There were, I had 4 lymph nodes that had tumors.
Okay.
There was a tumor in my collarbone, left rib, right rib, my liver, L2 of the spine, sacrum, and left hip. So
Wow.
it was, yeah. Yeah. So, I saw my oncologist and started chemo the next day. It was
My.
Yeah.
Okay. So take us into like chemo treatment, any surgeries, like take us all through that.
Sure. No surgeries. I guess when you are metastatic at this point, the survival rate isn't increased for doing a mastectomy. So my oncologist was like, let's wait, let's see what we can get shrunk. And, then we'll talk about any surgeries then. I started chemo right away. They put me on Herceptin and Progetta, so that's the immunotherapy, and then Taxol. Okay. I had a reaction to the Herceptin the first time they gave it to me in treatment center. So that was scary.
Yeah.
And like I said to them, I'm a healthy, all natural person. Like I had not even taken a Tylenol in 20 years. So once this regimen had started, my body just went into complete shock. After that first treatment, it was horrible. The bone pain, the joint pain. And then I ended up neutropenic and ended up in the hospital for 5 nights. So they could get me back, my white blood cell count back. Yeah. At that point, they had to move the chemo to every week because my body couldn't handle the large amount of Taxol at once. Yeah. So they reduced it by 1/3, and I went for chemo every week and then continued with immunotherapy every 3 weeks.
So do you go back on the Herceptin after you had that reaction?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They just load you up with more steroids and Benadryl prior so that your body doesn't have a reaction.
Yeah.
But I was able to work it out where during my treatments, they phased me out of all that stuff. So no more Benadryl, no more steroids, no more Tylenol. I said, no, like I only want to do the least amount that I have to do in that sense. So I don't take any of that anymore.
Yes. I love that, Jennifer, because so many women, and like, hey, if drugs are fantastic, They do what we need them to do sometimes, especially as cancer survivors. But, we have a standard kind of pre-med list, right? That women get with every treatment, and steroids, Benadryl, that's like commonplace. But like these drugs, like they make you tired, they make you hungry, can't sleep, moody, and so women, I don't think realize that they can actually say like, I want to try it without, or I want to try it at half a dose, because like it's actually these pre-meds, this steroid, this Benadryl that's actually taking away from my life, not the actual chemo itself.
Absolutely. And I was lucky enough where I have my oncologist completely understands where I come from my standpoint that I would like to do everything as natural as possible. So she really worked with me in that sense. And we just ticked it down to where I have nothing now.
So how did you go from like, you were all natural, like never taken a Tylenol, never eaten meat? How like mentally did you take that leap to now really getting like toxic drugs put into your body? Like, how did you overcome that mental hurdle?
I do have a homeopathic doctor. I've worked with him for 20 years. So he's helped me throughout this process also. And my oncologist allows me to work with him. So when he gives me suggestions for supplements or remedies to take, I run it by her. And then so he helped me get through some of those side effects as well with some of the supplements he put me on and some of those homeopathic remedies. And I just had that mindset that I had to do it. You got to do it. I just had to figure out a way to get it done. And I think kind of having like an endpoint was a little helpful. Trying to know like when is this going to end? That's going to end. But even during my chemo, I was responding well, but I had that one mass that was in the sacrum wasn't responding as well. It was giving me a lot of hip pain. So I ended up having to do 10 radiation treatments for that. And I honestly felt that radiation treatment was worse than the chemo.
Oh, tell me about that.
So I was fine for the first 4 treatments. I only did 10, but by the 6th, I think it was around the 6th treatment, the GI trouble started, and it was just nonstop from there.
What, so, like diarrhea, constipation?
Extreme diarrhea. So, I mean, I felt like the radiation had literally cooked my insides. It just literally destroyed me. I was on baby food for weeks. That's all I could, tolerate. And once the radiation stopped, I want to say it probably took about a month and a half for me to get back to be able to eat the way that I wanted to eat, because it destroyed me. It did kill the cancer. There's no active cancer there anymore. So that's a good thing, but it was it took its toll.
Wow.
Yeah.
Someone messaged me actually just yesterday and said like, I'm burning from the inside out. That's how they described it, which is very similar to how you've kind of described it here.
Yes. And I think most women that have breast cancer, their radiation is more in the breast area because they've had surgeries. But mine was on the spine. So mine, it caused a lot of bone pain and destroyed a lot of those muscles in that area. So once radiation was done, I had to go for physical therapy to build back up my muscle strength and everything, because I was losing all that in my left leg from the cancer.
So when did you finish radiation? When did that wrap up?
Radiation, I started in May, and it was only 10 sessions. So that was kind of quick.
Okay.
By June though, when I had like my scans, I had complete resolution or improvement, they'll say, of everything. So they wouldn't say, they won't use that word remission. So they stopped the Taxol in August. I continued with immunotherapy every 3 weeks.
Okay.
But then by November, my oncologist is just very on top of things. We did a brain MRI just to be safe. Like we had done one, before I started treatment, and they had found out it had metastasized to my brain.
Okay.
And that was in November. And I had no signs, no symptoms. My tumor markers hadn't increased. So my tumor markers, which were through the roof.
So how did she know to do a brain MRI? How did you go down that path?
She just does it proactively along the way. But I also had said to her, when I was on the Taxol, the chemo brain was so terrible. She had said, okay, once Taxol's done, we'll just check it to be safe with the brain MRI. But by the time November came, I said to her, I'm like, I'm not having any brain issues anymore. The brain fog had pretty much gone. I said, I feel great. I have no issues. And then it had metastasized to the brain.
So how big was like the mass in the brain?
So there were 5 that were measurable and the rest were immeasurable. They were like the size of pinpoints, but it was all over the brain.
Jennifer, like what a punch to the gut.
Yeah. Yeah. So after that happened, and I had been following you on Instagram.
Yeah.
After that happened, I said to my husband, I was like, I have to take my recovery now in my own hands. I love my oncologist and she was phenomenal. And she was able to get me that point where, where the cancer originally had been was gone. And that was fantastic. But she didn't have any help for me once the treatment had ended. And even though I'm like fairly healthy, it just wasn't enough to keep me that way. So that's when I reached out to you and started your program.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about because you would have started, like in November. Okay.
I think I started with you right before Christmas.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
I suppose it's February. Hey.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me in terms of what you did then. So you find these brain mets and then your oncologist is going to get involved with changing your treatment path. But you decide you need to do something in terms of like lifestyle, food, movement, whatever that looks like. So tell me what changed in terms of your treatment, and then let's talk about what you changed in terms of lifestyle.
Sure. So they had already stopped the Taxol, and they put me on oral chemo, daily oral chemo. So I'm on the Tuxia twice a day, every day. And then the capecitabine is twice a day, every day for 2 weeks, 1 week off. And then I still continue to get the immunotherapy with just Herceptin, no Perjeta right now, every 3 weeks.
Okay.
So I go for that. And I mean, once I started that program with you, it was really a matter of getting my protein levels up to where they needed to be. And that targeted exercise was a huge factor.
Yeah.
I mean, and I can remember after I had been in your program for a couple of weeks and I went and had blood work done, my blood work was the best it had ever been. They were like, whatever you're doing, you need to keep doing it. I was like, it's Dr. Amy.
Amazing. I love that. I love that. So what about, like, I mean, always my goal is to make sure, your body needs to be able to tolerate these like toxic treatments, right? And there's things we can do in terms of using food or movement to make sure that your body like recovers between cycles and can continue on, right? There's without a doubt that has an impact.
Yeah.
So you talk about bringing your protein up, but Jennifer, you also don't eat meat.
Right.
Okay. So talk to us, because a lot of women will say to me, like, look, I need to bring my protein up, but I'm vegetarian, I'm vegan. I only eat fish. I only eat, tell me, like, what were you doing that made the biggest difference in terms of bringing your protein up?
So I do smoothies, and that's, I think, my biggest way to get the protein up. So I do the 4 Sigmatic. It's the mushroom protein powder. So that has, I think I want to say like 18 grams of protein in it, but then I add flaxseed meal to that. I add hemp hearts to that and hemp protein. So that in itself bumps up my protein to about 25 to 30 grams.
That must be a good chunk of fiber too.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And I just I throw in a frozen banana and then some almond milk, but I'm going to switch to soy milk. So I get my 1 cup of soy milk every day.
Nice.
I know, so I'm going to make that switch. And then for me, I still eat eggs. So the eggs are an important piece.
Yeah.
So definitely keeping the eggs, peanut butter, lentils.
Yep.
When you and I spoke, I'm better off rather than doing 3 meals a day, doing 6 meals a day, or even 7 or 8. So like a little snack. So I found, they're like Norwegian crisp crackers that have protein in them because they're like seeds and such, but then you do that with hummus and then I can add some pumpkin seeds to that. So all those little things snack wise make a big difference.
I have to write that down because I'm actually Norwegian. I don't look it. I'm not tall and blonde like Heidi Klum, is she Norwegian or I don't know. I'm not tall and blonde. I'm short and a ginger. But actually, like my grandmother's Norwegian. So we eat a lot of Norwegian food, and I've never Norwegian crisps. I have to look that up.
Yeah, they're basically made with seeds.
Amazing.
Like a crispy little cracker. So it's great. You can dip it in hummus. You can dip it in peanut butter. That's a big thing. I found a cashew yogurt that I can add granola to and all that. The granola is basically seeds. So that bumps up the protein as well.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Because I always say, I don't think people eat vegetarian or vegan because it's easy, right? You're not picking this because it's the easy option, right? You're picking it because it either makes you physically feel better, ethically feel better, whatever it is, so it is more challenging to get your protein up when you don't eat meat, but it's still very possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we increase your protein up, which has a big impact on your blood levels. So how about how you're feeling? Like, how do you feel after you bring your protein up like this?
You feel better. Like I have more energy. I feel better. I feel stronger. And that's been a big piece because while I was on the chemo treatment, I had no energy. I was a couch potato. Like I couldn't do anything. I just sat, my husband would go to work and he's like, and come home and be like, you're still sitting on the couch. I'm like, yep, it's all I could do at that point. So, sat for too long during that chemo. So, and then, the targeted exercise definitely helps. So the walking every single day and then starting to do some of that modified strength training has made a big difference too.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about strength training first. So what is the strength training that you're doing now? What does that look like?
It's nothing huge yet. I do the bridge move. I don't know what
like a glute bridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's definitely helping to strengthen the muscles because I still have a lot of problems with my left hip and that left leg.
Yeah.
So that definitely helps. I do that first thing in the morning when I wake up and that helps to stretch it as well. And then just doing squats and planks. That's it for right now. But it's making a difference.
It seems so like minor, right?
Yeah.
It seems like so like that's it. I think when we say strength training, lots of people are thinking like max exertion, lifting weights, like in the gym, but like you're doing it in your house.
Yes. And I was intimidated to start the strength training at first. But just those little steps have made a big difference.
I've always been a big fan of glute bridges. I gotta tell you, love working on the glutes, but it's both an aesthetic love and also practical love. Because when we think about being sick or ill because of cancer treatment, we're in bed, right? Like, just like you said, I'm on the couch, I'm in bed, I'm exhausted. And we don't realize how much we use those glute muscles, those core muscles to even like shift ourselves around in bed or to get in and out of bed. It's huge. If you ever have surgery and need to recover, you're ever in bed because you're so exhausted, like those muscles are going to help you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's just been, it's a small little thing, but it makes such a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you said you were intimidated to start with the strength training. So what kind of like gave you the push to finally dive into it?
Because I was feeling better. So I was feeling better. I had more energy and I just knew that was the next step I needed to do to minimize any further recurrence.
Yeah.
So, I know I have to keep pushing myself in that way, in that direction.
Yeah. Which is kind of like that's such a huge step you took, Jennifer, because like you have active disease in your body, right? You have tumors, and a lot of women would be hesitant to actually move their body in a different way. But you went ahead and took that plunge.
Yeah, and it's made a difference. My last brain MRI showed that the 5 tumors that were there have all shrunk and all those other pinpoint tumors are gone.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's working.
Wow. Okay. So as of right now, where is there disease in your body or just in your brain, or is there any?
So I have all my tests coming up actually the end of this week. So I'll have a better idea. But my tumor markers have not increased at all. So, I mean, that I think is a good indicator. Because when I first started treatment, that CA15 was at 3,300. The CEA was at 1894. So, and they're all within the normal, they're both in the normal range now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we talked about strength training. Now I want to talk about like cardio or walking. What's that look like for you right now?
So for me, I just take a walk every day outside. I just go around the block. It's about a 25-minute walk. And it just feels good to get outside, the fresh air. And so I just make sure I do that every day. Even if it's raining, I take my umbrella and out we go.
Yeah, like you live on the East Coast, right? Like you live, so I mean, and it's winter time.
It is, but we've had such a mild winter here. So like today's going to be a beautiful day. So I'm like, got to get out there and I'll walk. You know, in the winter, I've just started now where I would usually put my, take my son to school and then go walk after that. But it's too cold right now in the morning. So then I just walk more in the afternoon, sort of like before he gets off the bus, that sort of thing. So it's a little warmer.
Yeah. So Jennifer, I have a question for you because, you know, a lot of women, they want to reduce their risk of recurrence. Like they want to do these things that you're doing right now, but they have a hard time going from where they are currently to actually putting these things in place. So like what made the big difference for you in terms of actually taking the step forward, like actually making a change?
I think it was joining your program because you hold me accountable. You make me be accountable. And even my oncologist, when I explained that I had joined your program and was working with you, and she was like, "Oh, that's fantastic." She's like, "Remember, I did tell you to take pea protein." And I was like, "Yes, but that's not the same." So I think it's the support from you. So when we hand in, you got to keep track of everything. When you hand it in each week, you give us that little push along the way. And for me, there's small steps and small pushes, which is, I think, what we need. Like, it's not any giant expectation that I can't achieve. It's all done in such a manner that you're successful and you feel better once you start.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild how I always like to start with food, first of all, because I know like that we can make changes to how you're feeling. You can feel a lot better. And then walking, strength training, right? You said you're already feeling better. Now we can start to put these pieces into place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And before I had started with you, I was mostly doing like a smoothie for breakfast, a smoothie for lunch, and a dinner. And in all honesty, I wasn't eating enough. And you were the one who pointed that out to me. I wasn't eating enough. I didn't have enough calories. So it was a lot harder for me to heal. So just even increasing the amount that I'm eating and what I'm eating has made a big difference.
Which is like such a common issue, honestly. It's really wild that so many women come to me, even if, you know, and I know your goal wasn't to lose weight. That wasn't your goal at all. But a lot of women come to me they want to lose weight, but they're still not eating enough food to even lose weight. Like we have to fuel your recovery. We have to fuel your energy, fuel your weight loss. And I think we're just put in this place as like women, as cancer survivors, that we are to be avoiding food or scared of food, or it's just not top of mind. And so it's really common for women to come that they're just not eating enough. I think the other issue which might have been for you, Jennifer, too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes you just don't feel hungry.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The medicine, sometimes you don't feel like eating and you definitely don't feel hungry. But once I started to increase and just do like little snacks, I felt better and I was starting to get hungrier. So I knew my body, that's what it needed.
Yeah. So let's back up here for a second, Jennifer, because, you know, we haven't really dove into like around the time you were diagnosed. Like you go from being healthy, you have this full life, and then you're told you have stage 4 breast cancer. I mean, breast cancer wasn't really on your radar at that point. So like, how did you take that in? How did you go from being diagnosed to like really advocating for yourself?
You know, when they first diagnosed me, it was a phone call in the car. I was by myself. So I got the phone call. And it was horrendous, was horrible. I ended up calling my husband and he met me like in the driveway and I, fell out of the car into his arms, had my cry. And then I was like, okay, I got to do what we got to do. I was like, let's go get the juicer. Let's go get this. And I just knew the things that I had to do to get myself healthy. I've always done like the healthy docuseries. I've done those for years. So I kind of knew all the people I wanted to go and get information from and kind of follow them. And just those small steps, making sure I was juicing and things like that to kind of help me along the way, has been a big thing too.
Yeah. I mean, as a stage 4 survivor, we know that there's not, enough in terms of what we're doing for stage 4 women right now, right? We need more. We always need more for everyone, but for stage 4 in particular. So when you're told like, and I struggle with this a lot with women that come to me, they're stage 4, and their team kind of says, like no surgery, no, like we don't have a ton of options. We're just, sometimes they throw out the word palliative even. Like, I mean, how do you even navigate that? Like as a cancer survivor myself, I'd be like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Like, how do I go from healthy to now we're talking about this?
It's crazy. So they actually, after my appointment with my oncologist, they did sign me up with a palliative doctor, and I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
But he's been a lifesaver for me. He's my go-to just for support, and he helps me find out, things through side effects to medication or different things to try. So he's like a great support. I see him once a month. But when I first started with him, I was like, I don't understand, like, is this hospice care? What is this? And he was like, no, we're trying to change the look of palliative care and make it more, anyone who has cancer should really be receiving the care, that kind of care. But it was mind blowing, to go from being an active mom, teacher to all of a sudden stage 4. My oncologist was lovely and allowed me to kind of find my way through this, where she didn't say to me like, okay, you can't go back to work. She was like, you do what you need to do. If you can go back, you can go back to work. I can take you out for 2 weeks. We can take you out for a month. So I did little steps of coming out of work. And then the one day she sat me down and she was like, you can't go back right now. So that was, definitely hard. But I'm learning to prioritize myself.
Yeah.
And putting myself first. Well, not necessarily first, as you said, but higher up on that priority list.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that has been a big thing. It's a change of mindset. And I think that has been another huge piece that has helped me along the way.
Yeah. Like, wow. I love that was your experience with like a palliative care doctor, because honestly, I look at palliative care clinicians in general. They're really crafty people. Like, they're innovative, and they're not just going to be like, oh, you got pain? Oh, well, they're like, wait a second. I once heard someone do this, so let's try like this thing instead. Like, they're not here to let you be uncomfortable. And so, I mean, in the concept of, we think about it as end of life care.
Right.
But that's not necessarily what it is. It's more like symptom management almost.
It is. And I mean, my palliative doctor, he's wonderful. He understands that like I really don't want to go down additional medicine, take additional things. So he really works with me to find other like healthy alternatives to help me out.
Yeah,
and
wow.
that has been a big help. So he's respectful of that, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it sounds like he's a real like gem in terms of your entire care team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Jennifer, what's the plan moving forward? You're on some treatments now. We got some scans coming up. Did you say the end of this week?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about coming up into scans, a lot of women struggle with that anxiety around scan time. And you've obviously had to navigate this several times in terms of scans. So what's your approach in dealing with that anxiety around time to get a scan?
Yeah, it's definitely scary. So I know like mindfulness is a really good thing to do. I have a very hard time sitting and meditating. It just it doesn't work for me. I do that EFT tapping. So that definitely helps me. I don't do it every day like I should, but I do it like probably twice a week right now, and that's okay. And I'll get there. So I get to the point every day. So I just do more of that when it's coming time for the scan. And I do a lot of deep breathing. A lot of deep breathing.
Okay. And then Jennifer, okay, so we've talked about this before too, but I want you to share this with people that are listening as well, is that as a stage 4 survivor, we're talking about your future, like long term. Okay. What's your plans? What's your goals? What's your dreams? Like, what do you have coming up on the horizon moving forward?
I'm in the midst of going through the disability process. So getting that taken care of in case I can't go back to work. And then, which I most likely won't be going back. I am looking to start a non-for-profit for cancer patients. So I knit, my mom crochets, we do hats and scarves and such. So we're looking to turn that into a non-for-profit to raise money for cancer patients because having cancer is expensive. Like I just want to be able to walk into my cancer center and like hand everyone a $25 gift card because it lights up their face when they get something, just even that little something or other. So that's sort of where I'm kind of looking right now. And just kind of happy to have some time where I can start to cook some meals for myself, make my protein balls, do that sort of thing. Spend my time with my pets, spend my time with my kids, that sort of thing. So not so much long-term looking down the road, but just looking smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I feel like a lot of women live like scan to scan, you know, and perhaps you feel that same way too, but there is like a spark in you that lives longer than that.
Oh
Like
yeah. And
quite a bit
yeah,
longer. Yeah.
absolutely. And I have a vision board. I did make that. So
Ah,
as soon as I got diagnosed with cancer, I said to my husband, I'm like making my vision board. I
uh-huh.
got my pictures on there. See it every morning when I wake up.
Yeah.
And like, that's my future. So I can look at that and I know like, okay, we're going to go on our trip. I had put like a picture of the cat that I wanted. So after my
Ah,
second good scan, I got my kitten.
nice.
So that is actually very helpful too. And some
Yeah.
of like the words from Coach Keisha, they go
Mhm.
out on the air. So it's just a great morning reminder to see each day.
Yeah. I hardly ever talk about it, but I have a vision board. It sits like right in front of me every day, of what like I want my life to look like, because if you can't visualize it, then you can't get there. So
Exactly.
that's number one. And then also when I was diagnosed with cancer, I did the exact same thing. You know, I had an entire file on my computer that was like called my cancer free file. And I would put like anything to do with cancer in there because it was just going to go towards being cancer free. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yes.
I think that kind of looking forward to who you want your future self to be, that's really powerful in directing your life right now.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
really is. Yes.
Okay. So Jennifer, you've been really generous with your time, but I do have one last question for you here. I want you to think about, someone else, another woman that's been diagnosed stage 4 breast. And I want you to think about what would be one piece of advice you would give that woman. I know that's a big question, just one piece of advice. That's hard. But what's kind
Yes.
of the one thing that you would want to share with them?
I think for me, what was helpful is I got myself a little notebook and I wrote everything in my notebook. So I have like my log. I kept track of my treatments. I kept track of how I felt after each day. And that definitely helped because then I kind of learned what was going to be my good days and what was going to be my bad days. So I could plan things out. So I knew like when I was on the steroids, the 2 days after treatment, I was great and I could do stuff, but then I'd be zonked for a couple of days. Once the steroids stopped, it was the opposite, where it was those 2 days that I was more tired and then I got better at the end of the week. So I think that was helpful to keep track of things, keep track of how you're feeling, just so you know what you can do in the future as you have your treatments down the road.
That's really powerful. When we talk about taking power back from cancer, that's part of it. Because a lot of times we think like, I can't plan anything. It's so unpredictable. And like we can find some consistencies even when you're having down days. We can start to predict them. So then like, okay, this is the day I schedule this. And then I'm busy these days because the steroids have worn off or whatever that looks like. But that is really taking some power back, I think.
Yeah, and it's funny, I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right, it does. It gives you your power back. It puts you a little more in control of things and
Yeah.
allows you to plan ahead, which I think is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jennifer, thanks so much for being on the podcast and sharing your story.
No problem. Thank you for having me.